All right. Well, welcome everybody. Thanks for attending the Forest Lake Association annual meeting and social events. I hope all of you were able to get some food. My name is Chris Perucci. I'm the current president of the Lake Association. Thank you. Things to discuss and go over tonight. Want to say a special thanks to our lake sponsors. If you're in the room, wave your hand. You know, we don't, no margin, no mission, so to speak. Appreciate your contributions. Thank you a lot. That we're going to be talking about here throughout the evening. But before we get into that, I want to introduce our Lake Association. This doesn't come together without a lot of work from a lot of people. So I'm going to sound off some names, and when I call your name out from the Lake Association board, if you could just raise your hand. So first off, Ken Wood. Chris Hoyt. Yeah, everybody knows Chris Hoyt and Bobby, right? Jerry Gruntner, our former president. Mike Schoenfeld. I'm just going to see you. Chris Loth. Andrea. She's got the baby around here somewhere. And Lisa Ambley, wherever you are, Lisa. So, thanks everybody. So as we kick things off tonight, last year, if you recall, I just wanted to spend just a couple minutes and really thank our tribe party that's involved in the Lake Association. And it was end of June last year that Steve McComish and his team that looks for invasive species on the lake had notified us of a new expansive AIS or aquatic invasive species. That's known as hybrid milfoil. And what was impressive about that is within a week of identifying that milfoil, which is going to be a problem for us in the future, which is super important that you are all involved. We had Steve identify it. We had permits from the DNR. We had pulled together our tribe party, the city, the watershed, the Forest Lake Association. And within a week, we were spraying the herbicide to treat that hybrid milfoil. So that happened really quickly. It was kind of an all hands on deck to address that because that is a problem and it's going to continue to be a problem for us. And that's why your membership is so important to us. We'll talk about that a little bit in the future. But again, as we kick things off, thanks everybody for coming. We are not a lake association without your contributions. We continue to focus on the projects. We hope that you can see those. Board members will be around tonight. If you have any questions, feel free to approach us and enjoy the evening. With that, I'll kick it over to Ken.
Thanks very much. Great, thank you everybody. Thanks for coming. Got out here even through the rain. Thank you. Okay, this is the agenda that we got set up for you. We got a bunch of really nice speakers here joining us this evening. So I'm kicking it off. Then we got our mayor, Blake Roberts, is here with us. Mike Kinney, Aiden Reed from the Watershed District. Kelly Amoth, who is going to talk about getting the lead out of our fishing tackle. And Steve McComas on invasive species. Then we'll have a Q&A panel at the end. The speakers will all be here to answer questions. So we'll hold your questions until we get to the end. Okay. So I know that as you came in here, there was an opportunity to renew your membership. Well, you have another opportunity right here to renew your membership as well. So if you haven't done it yet, you can scan this QR code. It'll pop up. Go to the website. We got the Wi-Fi. And I'll tell you more about why this is so important as we go forward. But please renew your memberships. Also, before we get started, I just wanted to tell just a little story. So what is there are one of the most important things. We're all pontooners, or a lot of us are pontooners out there at the lake. So what are the three things that are important when you're a captain of a pontoon boat? The first one is you always have to bring extra snacks. The second thing, the music has to be 70s classic rock. Okay, 80s maybe. Okay. The last thing is captains do not park a pontoon. What they do is they gracefully drift into place next to the boat with the best chips and salsa. Okay, I'd also like to, before we get started, just thank Paul Peterson from Lakes Lake Area TV, he's back there is broadcasting this live for us. It's on YouTube, so thank you very much. Thank you. All right, so what's been going on with the lake? So Lake Association, we've got 975 residences on the lake. There's 514 individuals that in 2024 were members of that. That includes our lake sponsors. So we've got about half of the residents on the lake that are contributing to our activity. Our goal is to increase that by about 10% here in 2025 to add 50. There's 621 members on our database, so just our database, some of the statistics about our social media that Chris and Andrea have put together for us. What did we do? So last year, 2024 was not as good as we would have hoped. We lost some members in 17 where we were at 288 members. So what are we doing to try to accelerate that? We're new members and lake sponsors out of that activity. We've now added 49 lake sponsors or corporate members to this program, which is fantastic. And also, we're working with social media. It's important, though, that you all help too, and that's, talking to your neighbors and then also getting your signs out. We've got those here for you this evening. So how does it break down? Our total budget that we spent, actually, this is our income. We'll start with income because this is the most important part, so then we have the money to spend. Get an idea, we had $43,000 was our income last year, spread across the individuals, lake sponsors, homeowners association, and then donations. Plus grants. So we actually apply for grants. And that was about how much we spent as well. So then where are we this year? This year to date, we've got $25,000 worth of income that have come in so far, and we've got to get to this $43,000 level. So we've got to close, another $12,000 plus dollars. And so that's where I need you to think about it as you're renewing your memberships. Also consider making a donation, which would be fantastic. And I wanted to highlight one of those donations. This just came in this year from Gene Hallberg and the Hallberg Foundation. Let's give a round of applause for Gene. Thank you, Gene. Thank you to the Hallberg Foundation. Yeah, so as you renew your membership, there are options on the website. It's $50 to be a member, but if you want to give extra, we would really appreciate it. We're going to need that to have the funds to address the problems that are ahead of us. So what are we doing? What are we spending the money on? So this is the total budget last year, right around $43,000, $27,000 on treating Eurasian milfoil, operating costs, advertising, Starry Stonework work, and then down at the bottom you can see the salaries was a whopping zero. So this is an all-volunteer organization, we'd like you to know. That's the plan as we continue forward here as well. So what are we accomplishing? That's your hard-earned money, our time that we're putting out on this, and Chris talked about this right off the bat. This was our best accomplishment last year, which was this addressing the hybrid Eurasian milfoil. There were 48 acres. 14 days after we discovered, we were treating it. There was $77,000 spent on that. That's where it's important that we have an agreement between us, the Comfort Lake Forest Lake Watershed District, and the city to try to address these types of emergencies. The other thing that was really good is that let me just say that on this hybrid, we don't think it's gone. That it's like other parts of the Eurasian milfoil. It's still there. We've treated it. We've knocked it back, but we think we're going to have to treat it again. We'll see. Steve will be doing the delineation and let us know what's necessary this year. Starry stonewort, fantastic. No starry stonewort found, so that's great. Some other accomplishments. So we signed a tri-party agreement with the city, the Comfort Lake Forest Lake Watershed District, and ourselves. Jerry Gruntner was critical to that effort, and that's a budget that's spent of about $164,000 a year on AIS treatment of the lake. You could see we're contributing a small portion. You saw of our budget, roughly 20-ish thousand of that money. So we're leveraging our money, our contribution, our political power that we have as a group to get the other groups to spend their money. We also did a grant. We got $4,800 in grants from the county. And then in 2025, we've already got the DNR grant of $12,000 and another one of $4,900. So these are, we're out there, we're aggressive, we're trying to get these things done. We also contribute to the Lakeside Dock, which many of us enjoy, and you go to Tuesday to Arcs in the Park, pull your boat up, and then also the channel buoys are paid for by the Lake Association. Now here's a controversial topic, the weed harvester. So, okay, what did we do last year with this? I thought this was just a fun graphic to give you an idea of, we pulled out 1,600 cubic yards of native vegetation out of the lake to make it more navigable. And that's the city. The city has taken over that responsibility from us. They're running the boat. They're out there, dump trucks full of stuff and keeping the lake in good shape for us to use and enjoy. We're continuing to operate that again they'll continue to operate that in 2025. So who's responsible for these AIS treatments? We've got Forest Lake. We pay for the treatment of Eurasian milfoil. The watershed district actually goes out and does the delineation. The starry stonewort, we pay for the delineation. There's nothing to treat, as you saw, nothing out there. And then the other ones, curly pondweed, flowering rush, purple loosestrife, that's the watershed is doing the delineation and providing the treatment. So this is, just also thought, get an idea of how have we done over the last few years. These are the results of both us and the watershed and the city working together. Here's Eurasian water milfoil. It was going up, then it went down dramatically, so we got ahead of it. But now last year we saw the spike up again with the hybrid milfoil that was in Second Lake. And we'll see how, see if we got ahead of it for this year. Here's the curly leaf pondweed on a very nice trend going in the downward direction. And then also the flowering rush treatments have been quite effective as well. The other thing so what causes these AIS? A lot of it is coming in on boats from other lakes, right? So that's where we're inspecting the boats that are coming into the lake, making sure they're clean, they got the bilge plug is out, you make sure they're not dragging in stuff on their propellers. And so last year, total cost of boat inspections spent was $70,000. Again, this is not something we're spending, this is the watershed district spending on that. 5,000 boats expected, 3,000 hours spent on that. The important thing is to see what are these trends that we saw on inspections. We saw 80 watercraft, and that was a change we found with plants and animals up. That went up from 59, so that's, it's red because we're seeing more of that. 77 watercraft required their bilge plug to become pulled out. 869 watercraft with plants, animals, bud. That one was down from 1,200. And then there was one of that's, the most concerning one is that 37 boats came in from lakes infested with starry stonewort, and that's up from 29. So diligence, focus, working together to keep that stuff off the boats that are coming in is super important. Health of the lake. So how's the grade look? Our friends, Mike Kinney and Aiden Reed are going to talk and give us the actual score that we get as a lake for this year. But there are several species of AIS in the lake, but they're not all here, so that's great. We do see continued heavy boat traffic, but we're inspecting it. Fisheries are very good. TJ Debates, who was here last year, sends his regards. He said he didn't have anything new to update from last year, but Forest Lake is a great fishery. Alum treatment for Second Lake, that was very successful. We're going to hear some more about that from Aiden and Michael here in just a few minutes. And then there's continued pressure on our asset here, our lake. People are moving here. It's a great place to live and a great lifestyle. Two more things, and I'm going to wrap it up. One is lake ambassadors. Some of your lake ambassadors are here with us this evening, and I appreciate their support. One what's a lake ambassador do? Very, very light duty. You just need to talk to people, help and explain what we're doing, share this kind of information, tell them why it's important to be part of the Lake Association. And, ask them to sign up, ask them to pay their dues. It's, as you can see, we need those dollars to get to our $43,000 budget. I'm going to pass around a sheet here that you can all, if you'd like to become an ambassador, please add your name to it. Pass along. Hey, how are you? Yeah, great. I've got a pen. There we go. Thank you. Okay. All right. Last one. This is, so Forest Lake, we live on a premier lake. Let's help drive our 2025 membership level up, help us meet our membership goals. Well, the easiest way to do that is put these signs out in your yard. And we've got extra signs here in the back, so please grab one on the way out if you don't have a sign. With that, I'm going to turn it over to our mayor, Blake Roberts, to come on up. Blake?
Thank you, Ken. Just want to thank everyone for coming tonight. What a great turnout. When we started this association back in 2007, it was a couple guys sitting down at the lake or trying to figure out how we could clean the ice off one year. And then following year, the city decided that they were going to quit funding the in the airport or the library space because it was so large. We had a gathering. We had mayor in November. I'd like to acknowledge some of the council members that are here tonight. We have Councilmember Larson right there. Councilmember Kevin Miller right here. I don't know if Councilmember Erickson is here, and I know that Councilmember Valento's not here, but this council is more than supportive of the lake and knows how important it is to have this natural resource. Many of you know that we've not had a full-time city administrator for about a year. But we did find a great person in Mark Stotts. So I'd like to welcome Mark Stotts. Stand up and Mark comes from Centerville. He's been a city administrator down there for 7 years. But just as importantly, he had been an engineer for many cities throughout the metro for a number of years. So he brings that experience to Forest Lake and helping us with all the future development that we have coming. This association has become much more sophisticated than, like I said, back in 2007 when we were just trying to do a lake cleanup. So I applaud the past board members, past presidents, and future and present board members for doing such a great job because it's elevated it to another level. And some of these stats here where things are improving, that says a lot. So I applaud the board members and past presidents. So thank you for that. Earlier, this tri-party agreement. The city is committed. It's been for years. This agreement with its partnerships with the watershed and the Lake Association is so important. And so we will continue to fund that, be a part of that. As Ken mentioned, the harvester is a little bit controversial. Some people love it, some people don't. We've really worked really hard to cut in areas where the wind is coming out of so that we're not having those weeds go onto your shorelines, because I understand that is frustrating. But there's more conversation to be had on that. If there's strong feedback either way, we're more than willing to listen to that because, as Ken mentioned, the city does operate that program. Another thing that was mentioned was the dock that was put in 2 years ago. That shows the commitment and the partnership between the association and the city. They came to us and said, hey, we've got this money, we'd like to increase the dock size, and we took them up on that because we want to drive more people to the downtown, and many of you enjoy using that amenity and bringing people in and shopping in our stores and restaurants. The other reason that we're so invested and want to continue to fund the lake is tax base. I don't have to tell any of you in this room, you are paying the majority of the residential property taxes. So we need to keep this natural resource in high demand to keep those dollars coming in. It's just reality. It's not all about taxes, but we appreciate everyone contributing as they do, and it helps the economy and bringing things to the city. Just a couple other things that I want to talk about that are somewhat related to city, the lake, but not so much. Development. Forest Lake is coming, a wave of development's coming. We are projecting 700 homes to be coming to the city in the next 5 years. This development will then bring in new shops, new restaurants, so we're very actively going after these developments. The phone is ringing on a regular basis, so people are wanting to come to Forest Lake, and that's just going to help our tax base. This council and the previous council is committed to improving the infrastructure of the city, funding parks, and so that's been something that we've been working on quite a bit. One example is North Shore. Many of you know that we are going to be redoing North Shore from 235th out to 97. Should have been done a number of years ago. It's a $5 million project. We got some news, maybe it might be a little bit less today, so we'll be starting that project here in, I think, May. Another big project that's not going to be the easiest to handle is the Highway 97 from 61 to 35 will be a 2-year project, and unfortunately throughout that time it'll be closed during certain times. The short-term pain will be a great long-term gain with just having that section of the street much safer to get through and traffic to be moving through. Another exciting thing that I think a lot of people that live on the lake will be interested to know, we are looking at, and I'm assuming it's going to happen, to legalize ATVs, UTVs, and golf carts on city streets. This is something that many people have been really interested in. I think if everything works out right here, we're just trying to dot our I's and cross our T's. By the 28th, we'll have that approved and it'll be legal to drive on the streets with UTVs, ATVs. So that's all I really have. The opportunities that Forest Lake has coming up, I'm excited and honored to be able to help lead some of these new initiatives. Here throughout the day, the evening, I have cards in the back. If you have any questions, please come up and please enjoy the rest of the program.
Thank you very much, Mayor Roberts. Okay, our next speakers are Mike Kenny and Aidan Reed from the Comfort Lake, Forest Lake Watershed District. All right.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Mike Kinney. Met quite a few of you over the years, or at least maybe if you've seen me here in past years. This is my 11th Lake Association meeting. So, we'll try to keep it fairly quick. I'm going to cover some of the more just the general lake topics, and then Aidan's going to talk about his favorite topic, and that's the shoreline. Let's see if I got this figured out. Okay, there we go. Thank you. Who we are, special unit of government, special purpose unit of government. I would say think of us like a school district. So it's not based on typical political boundaries of cities and counties, but rather the boundary of the way the water flows itself. So, and we manage the entire Comfort Lake, Forest Lake Watershed District because it's both Washington County and Chisago County. But we do it through those 4 different colored areas of lake management districts. So the other thing about the district is that we have 23 named lakes. Forest Lake is one of them. Then there's also roughly something like 92 miles of stream channels and such that are within this. So pretty complex network of flow. That creates its own challenges and opportunities. And then roughly 10,000 acres of wetland. So that's considering how much, Forest Lake is roughly 2,200 acres. That's almost 4 times, or a little more than 4 times larger. So that's another piece that's important as a headwaters for the Sunrise River, which flows north and then connects into the Sunrise River. So these are the main areas of programming that we have here. We'll get into them a little bit here. Oh, you better go this way. I'm folding it the wrong way. I'll just do the button. Yep. So phosphorus is one of things that lakes and rivers can be impaired by. Minnesota Pollution Control Agency makes that determination based off of data that's submitted and tracked over the years. It's a natural occurring nutrient and leaves and grasses and things like that. So, however, the thing about it is that when it's in excess, then it gets into this area of being dirty or algae driven. So phosphorus is the limiting factor for algae growth. So if you have excess phosphorus, then you'll have developed into a green turbid water like we used to have on a more regular basis here on Forest Lake. So Forest Lake has been near that impaired state at 40 micrograms per liter, coming this direction to your left. That's what would constitute cleaner water. And so, and at the bottom of the screen there, you can see that where the average was in 2015 and 2016, and where we are the last couple of years. So while that's maybe not a huge number, but considering the size of Forest Lake, it takes about what they consider the residence time, the amount of time it would take for all the water to be replaced would be a little over like 2.3 years. So, so it takes a while, and so it's it takes a fair amount to get in and make it worse, but also a fair amount of effort to clean it up because of its size. So kind of given that description there before, so this is, the thing that, that I saw in 2014 and 2015, and I remember specifically being out on Third Lake midsummer, and there were definitely areas that were somewhat pea green, and that was what we were seeing then above that red line. So that the above is bad, and the below is where you want to be. So we're now seeing midsummer, which is the high use of the lake, is in this better water quality range, and that's really an important objective from a water quality standpoint. We are not making any attempt to make it Lake Superior clean. So that is a oligotrophic lake, so it's super clean. It's going to have plants, aquatic plants. They're not weeds, they're aquatic plants. And those plants then provide the cover, and that's why TJ loves Forest Lake so much, because TJ debates, because it's a great fishery because it has that cover with the aquatic plants. So and this is the overall trend line for the 3 main basins, all going in a positive direction. So then here's just generally, so what we had calculated based off of, because there used to be a Forest Lake WMO that started, I think, in the 1980s. That was a watershed management organization run by the city and the township. So data has been collected on Forest Lake for quite some number of years. So the calculation of what was the total load coming in is roughly 6,000 pounds. That's a lot. And then to get it to that cleaner water state that we're after was almost 1,500. And where does it come from? It's stormwater, it's the runoff. There's something internal load, meaning that the nutrients that get into the lake, once it goes anoxic, meaning that there's, in the bottom of the lake, there's a point where there's no oxygen during the kind of the hottest part of the summer, and then phosphorus can be released from the bottom and drive algae production in the lake. So that's why we do the alum treatment. In addition, then there's just the runoff, direct runoff from the shoreline, and so that's the part then that all of you control. And it's the area that I'll show you is maybe the last remaining area that we're interested in partnering in because of its impact. So, so we're this sort of speed dial of where we're at. We've done a lot of the large capital projects. We'll have another slide. We've done the alum treatment. We're into the fall, early fall, that alum treatment. And then just a few more planned projects. But one of the big ones has been with the city of Forest Lake. We did the street sweeping. We did that study. It was one of the very first meetings that Steve Schmaltz and I had with the city back in 2014 to talk about that. I had been involved with some research on that, and so we wrote the grant, gave it the grant application to the city, and they were awarded the grant to buy the sweeper to do enhanced sweeping. So that's why you see it more often than just the spring and fall. So, and that reduces their cost on cleaning out stormwater ponds and other things, and overall extends street life, but oh, by the way, provides a much improved water quality. And one of the cheapest things that we can actually do is that increased sweeping. So here's just a list of the larger engineering projects. Obviously, you're not going to read it. There's a handout in the back. Steve was handing out to people as you come in. You can take a look at it if you have any questions. So, and it does include in there that sweeping and the alum treatment. So, but otherwise, there's 9 different ones. So there's the location with the golf course there, Forest Hills Golf Course. We did an alum treatment on Shields Lake, which there's a picture of that. But that was a huge improvement there, just because of how that was a highly, highly impaired water body. It was like nobody was out there, nobody was using it. There was a lot of issues with it, rough fish, carp, things like that, but it's in a much, much greater state. And under the TMDL, that was to be a city responsibility, but we took it on. And and now we've been working with the city also on that park over there. So it's been a really good ongoing partnership as well. So here's the alum treatment for Forest Lake. A year ago, last fall, some of you probably remember that. So again, we have a timeline for this fall. And again, quite cost effective, but we're continuing to monitoring the effectiveness. Lake systems are very, very complex, but we're trying to work within, we have several university folks doing additional research in cooperation with the Watershed District on Forest Lake, so that's always good to be able to leverage those partnerships. So and some of you probably remember some of these other major projects. This is out on wetland restoration project, basically, because there's a lot of unnatural ditching that had occurred, so it's artificially draining wetlands and bringing into Forest Lake. So we're trying to do what we can in different areas to do restoration and hold water. That also provides flood protection for the future rather than just letting it all run off directly in a fast pace. So here's some other things that we're working on from a program standpoint, trying to understand a lot of this. We do have a permitting program. We're currently trying to work with the university on understanding some of the stormwater cost components of it. It's an area that's really not been well engineered. It's with the St. Anthony Falls. And again, more partnerships with the city and some of their MS4 and ordinances. So, and we just had a really good meeting on our hydraulic and hydrology modeling, and that's trying to look at where potential flooding would be if we were to have a large rain event such as 10 inches or so, which have occurred almost annually over the last 20 years somewhere in the state of Minnesota. So, all right, we'll hand over to Aiden for a little bit.
All right, thank you, Mike. He'll be back. Did we get this working? All right. So, just to go back to this slide, I'm here tonight to talk about shorelines. So every time I come to this meeting, I get a few more familiar faces as we have more and more shoreline site visits. This is an example of a natural shoreline. So this is actually on Comfort Lake. It's not Forest Lake, but this is one of my favorite photos. This is one that gets a lot of response from folks. We're going to talk a little bit about natural shorelines and why we want them, and some of the resources we have available for folks who are interested. So, why do we care about natural shorelines? So this is a map that I have. The DNR has a shoreline survey that they do for all the major lakes in Minnesota. And Forest Lake is 817th out of 824. So, that's disappointing to a lot of us here. And what does that mean? Well, this is natural shoreline, and that can impact our water quality, it can impact our fisheries, and ultimately can impact property values. So when we're looking at why we want to move this number up, why we want to be in the top 1%, not the bottom 1%, it's because we're thinking about those benefits that the lake offers to our community, to us as individuals, but also to the environment. One other thing that we get a lot of questions about this year in particular, ice damage. So these are just a few photos that we collected this year. And especially folks on the north side, I'm sure this is what your lakeshore, the neighbor's lakeshore looked like at the beginning of the year. So ice heave, it's a natural process, it happens. Where do we see it impact the most? Rock-clad shorelines and with turf down to the base of the lake. And so, it's not just an example of us trying to improve the natural environment for our fisheries and for other aquatic organisms, but we're also trying to save you some money in repairs as well. I can give you some examples of what we're looking for. This is an example that is kind of most in line with something that's approachable on Forest Lake. Some of you might have cabins up north or go up and visit family cabins. We're not necessarily looking for that completely natural forested shoreline. I've seen them on Forest Lake, and you'll kind of struggle to see a home back there. And I love that idea of not even being able to see my house from the lake. But this is what's a little bit more approachable for most folks. You've got your dock access, you've got your beach access, and then you've got this shoreline buffer. And what that's doing is it's basically preventing runoff from entering the lake. Mike had shown that slide of we're pretty close to achieving our goal. That last little slice, part of it relies on things like this. These shoreline buffers are going to prevent runoff from entering the lake and causing those algae blooms. Additionally, you've got some aesthetic benefits there. If you like bees, if you like pollinators, if you like birds, those are all the types of animals that are going to use that. Turtles, loons, all of those creatures that use the shoreline habitat are going to benefit from an approach like that. And, like I mentioned, you'll have less nosy neighbors, despite you loving them, being able to see your house from the lake. So, what do we have available for you if you're interested? We have some financial support, especially this year with how much ice damage we've been seeing. We've had a lot of demand for our services, but we do have grants. We have like a mini grant. It'll be a smaller reimbursement program of up to $500. That's if you're just looking to add a couple trees, maybe some shrubs, or maybe a small strip of a pollinator patch. We have resources to support you on that. We do have a larger community water cost share. Those are for those larger shorelines. Say you have a rock-clad shoreline, it's deteriorated over the last 10, 15 years. You're looking for something different. You're looking at that $20,000 or $30,000 repair bill. We do have a grant available that can help you design something different. And we've seen a lot of folks who rock is expensive to haul out, so let's not do that. let's look at some ways of incorporating existing rock into a more natural setting that can support more organisms and help us meet our water quality goals. The last one I have on here is our property tax credit program. Property tax payment program, excuse me. What if you already have a natural shoreline? If you have a shoreline, if you have plants or flowers that look like this already, we have a program for you. You might be eligible for a small payment. This year's payment rates are $300 or $150. Those are for folks whose properties meet certain criteria where they're already benefiting the lake or the watershed to such an extent that we're looking to give back a little bit. I'm going to go back to that one in a second. In addition to that financial assistance, we have what we call technical assistance. If you have any questions about your property, about your lake, about any of these pictures, about anything that I've talked about, call us and set up a site visit. Myself and some of our other staff will come out to your property. We can kind of work through things with you, whether it's a little bit of a rain garden you have envisioned, you want to know about how downspout diverters work. We're very happy to make time for anything that will help with water quality benefits. So all residents eligible for a site visit, free soil testing. Your residence is eligible for soil testing for free from the watershed once every 3 years. Especially if you're using a lawn service, we recommend you sign up for this just to make sure you're getting your money's worth. We can help you make those correct decisions about what fertilizers to apply. You can even turn around and give the soil test to your lawn care provider and they'll use that information to better treat your lawn. So highly recommend that if you haven't had one. Project design and support, if you're looking for ideas on how to design a rain garden or a shoreline restoration, we can help you out with that. We work with a landscape architect that is able to put together some great concepts. Then lastly, we have a weed wrench for checkout available for pulling out buckthorn or honeysuckle or any of those more invasive plants that folks have trouble with. This is one that I was asked to highlight. So these are some photos from a local garden supply company in the state of Minnesota. You are not supposed to be applying anything with phosphorus to your lawn unless it's a brand new lawn or if you have a soil test that shows you should really, really, really do it. In general, if you have an established lawn, look for the 0 in the middle. What that is that's phosphorus. Phosphorus is a necessary nutrient when it's necessary. Only use it when it's necessary. In general, it's not necessary. If you're starting a lawn or if you get a soil test that indicates it, start looking for those other options. But in general, we're looking for the 0. That's going to be good for the lake and it'll be better for your lawn long term as well. And it'll save you money. All right, so with that, I'll turn it back over to Mike. We'll do some questions here right after. Ask me that.
All right, thanks, Aiden. One thing I'll just note for Aiden, thanks, Bob. So just this winter, he's completed his certified crop advisor exam. And so as of a couple years ago, I was the only certified agronomist in the state of Minnesota working in watershed areas, which really surprised me when I did a survey. And now we have Aiden over here too. So to me and to Aiden, your lawn, your turf is another crop. So we try to treat it as such. And one thing that just simplistically going back to that, then the number one thing in almost all lawn problems is going to be pH and organic matter levels. So if you don't have 5% organic matter and a balanced pH, you're going to have lawn issues. So, and the phosphorus component is real. You know, if you're putting it in there, it dissolves, it'll drain into the lake, and that's what's feeding and driving. You're literally feeding the plants that are in the lake, and that's certainly not your objective, I know. So that's part of what we're trying to educate people about and providing that service. So and helping people understand what that looks like. So we do have, again, we'll continue to do a lot of monitoring around the lake. We're going to, particularly, we're trying to focus in on the Shields Lake drainage area. We found some sample test results last year that were higher than we were expecting. But we also do have, again, these other programs. You can volunteer. We have a citizen advisory committee, which Aiden runs. that's a good opportunity as well to get involved, learn more about the watershed district as a whole. So, and then just overall, there are these other lakes. These are some of the other major ones that we're looking at. And one of the things that we're, by having a strong focus on cost benefit, the Pareto principle, which is an economic principle, driving towards just doing a smaller number of projects that have the biggest impact, the 80-20 rule. So that's been able to get us a lot farther, much faster. Lakes like Moody and Shields were like in the 160 mark or more, 200 for many years, and we've been able to bring them down substantially, and now they're thriving in a lot of different ways. All right, there's our contact information, and Ken, I'll hand it back to you.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Aiden. Okay, our next speaker is Kelly Amath from the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. Thank you very much, Kelly.
Thanks everybody for having me tonight. I've been doing this work at the PCA with the Get the Let Out program for almost 5 years now. I've talked to a lot of lake associations, and you're the biggest group I've ever got to talk to. So give yourself a check for that one. It's great to see so many people who care so much about where they live and the water and the habitat around your lake. So thanks for having me tonight. Before I talk about loons, I'd love to hear from you if you've seen loons on Forest Lake yet, if you've heard loons on Forest Lake yet. Okay. Just my informal polling, since I live in North St. Paul, so sometimes I randomly hear them, but I have to know if they're back yet. So glad that you're starting to see loons since we've had a little bit of a faster spring. Just a little bit of loon natural history basics. Loons are fish eaters, they're piscivores. So I'm sure you've encountered loons on Forest Lake at some point. And in the summertime, adult loons will eat up to 2 pounds of fish a day, which is amazing. Thinking about catching that many fish to eat all that. Fish are their preferred species for their diet, but they'll also eat frogs, toads, salamanders, crayfish, if they really have to. But I'm glad you had somebody from talk about the fishery of Forest Lake last year to know about that. It's a healthy fishery, that loons are here because there's fish to eat. A little bit about habitat. Great to go after Aiden talking about shorelines. But loons spend almost all of their time on the water, including sleeping at night. The only time they are on land is for nesting. So trying to give them natural spots for making nests. Are there any artificial nesting platforms on Forest Lake? Anybody have like the PVC rafts that go out? Sometimes that happens. I know in White Bear Lake they have a couple that they've tried. It's another method to encourage loon nesting, not always very successful. So as much as we can do to help give them natural spaces, the better. And then loons are a great indicator species for us to talk about water quality. Thinking about if there are loons present, there are fish present, because that's what they want to eat. But it also says something about the health of the water as well. I love talking. I feel really lucky in my job at the PCA that I get to talk to people mostly about loons, because I like to tell, especially students, that I haven't met anybody yet in Minnesota who doesn't like loons. It's like everybody has a story about loons. They want to share about loons. And so I really feel lucky that I get to talk about these amazing birds. Minnesota is the only state in the country that has the common loon as our state bird. Maybe why we put it on everything. And people will buy just about anything that has a loon on it too. But they are amazing birds. And I feel so lucky that we get to spend our summers with them as well. And one of the most amazing things about loons is their incredible ability to dive. So unlike other birds, they have very, very heavy, dense bones because I'm sure there are a lot of anglers in the room too. So when I talk to kids, I say, are fish right at the surface of the water? They're usually deep. So loons need to dive deeply to catch the fish that they want to eat. They are visual predators, so they use their eyes to see the fish first, to pursue them. And everything about their body is built to be in the water. This is an amazing photograph. Somebody was actually scuba diving and got this photo. There are very few photos and videos of loons diving and pursuing fish. And I love this photo because it shows how far back on their bodies loons' legs are. So loons are physically unable to stand up on land. If you ever see a loon on land, they're just really they're scooting on their belly and they're not going very far. Their legs, the purpose of them is to be paddles or oars to move them through the water. And they're able to compress their feathers, their wings to their body to reach up to 100 feet deep in some lakes. They can hold their breath for up to 5 minutes. I've had the experience of seeing loons dive and thinking they'll pop back up close by, and they never do. So it's always fun to see where they do emerge. But this ability to dive also leads into the work that I do in talking about fishing too. So, but amazing birds, very well adapted to a life in the water. I've also really become fascinated by thinking about what loons do when they're not here in Minnesota. Through a population study to follow the migration patterns of loons, researchers several years ago were able to determine that most Minnesota loons go to the Gulf of Mexico, and they spend their winters off the shore of Louisiana and Florida. I included this picture too to show you the winter plumage of loons. I had a teacher one time say, I have a friend in Florida and she thinks those birds are really boring looking. Well, I guess. In the winter they are. And I think it's really interesting that these birds are adapted to freshwater lakes for half of their year and saltwater ocean for the other half. They also mostly eat crabs in the winter time too. So they lead a completely different life when they're not here. Just thinking about threats to loons, I'll talk about the main focus of my program, but a big one too is thinking about habitat. So thinking about everything Aiden shared about our natural shorelines, giving loons natural spaces to make their nests so they can have that time on land when they need to sit on their eggs to incubate them. An adult loon pair will only lay 1 to 2 eggs, period, per summer. So they invest so much time and energy into the development of those chicks that they need a safe spot. Students especially like to ask me about predators of loons, and mostly natural predators for loons are the chicks, the young ones. So thinking about any animal that would want to eat egg, so raccoons, foxes even, and then thinking of those chicks, so bigger fish that could actually eat a chick too. So muskies, northerns, big fish like that. So protecting habitat. Also, National Audubon has this projection that Minnesota's warming climate may lead to common loons no longer being here by the year 2080. So you've talked a lot about vegetation in Forest Lake and what that looks like. So knowing that warmer waters, there's going to be decreased water quality and clarity for those visual predators to see fish, also more vegetation growing. Loons also prefer a lot of different cold water species of fish, so thinking about as our climate warms, less of those cold water species may be here. So something to think about too in our protection of loons. And then also boats and wakes. I liked Ken's pontoon jokes. I was on a pontoon last summer. My friends were like, Kelly, there's a loon over there. And I had to remind myself that loons, how low they sit in the water and how hard it is sometimes to see them from boats, even if you're in a pontoon and not moving very fast. But there's a growing concern about what wakes are doing to shorelines and also lake bottoms as well. So thinking about being a mindful boater when you're on the water, sharing that space with other people and wildlife as well. And then the big one I talk about is lead in consumer products. So I always leave pencils on here, especially for kids, but pencils have never contained lead. It's always been graphite, but they always say that one first. So we also have paint, gasoline, ammunition, tackle, and our pipes. So lead was removed from paint in the 1970s. It was originally added to help it dry faster, be more durable, repel moisture, but knowing issues that can come from lead in our homes, a lot of children were actually eating lead paint chips and getting very, very ill. So lead has been removed from paint since the late 1970s. Lead was also removed from gasoline with the Clean Air Act in the late 70s as well. So fighting increasing air pollution, catalytic converters were added to cars to help with better air quality. Catalytic converters and leaded gasoline did not get along, so lead was removed from gasoline then. Lead still persists in some forms of ammunition, so if you're a waterfowl hunter, so if you hunt geese or ducks, that's steel shot, so lead was banned from waterfowl hunting in the late 80s and went into effect in 1991. But lead still persists for other types of game and also in our fishing tackle, and then communities across the country and the state are working on our infrastructure of lead pipes for our water into our homes, schools, and businesses. So this connection between loons and lead. My anglers in the room, this is I won't make you raise your hand, but if you've ever had a fish that got away, had your line break, lost fishing tackle, those are all ways that lead can get into the body of a loon. So the main way is if a loon eats a fish that has lead tackle attached to it or already inside of it, that lead will go into the loon. So that's the main way. So if your line breaks and you lose your tackle that way, it's still out there and a loon could still potentially ingest it. The second way is for all of that lost fishing tackle that we all lose. It happens. Tackle is meant to be heavy though, so it sinks to the bottom of lakes. And it will remain there. I always think of my grandfather. He was a big fisherman, and any tackle that he lost throughout his entire life is still wherever he lost it, probably in Canada somewhere on a walleye trip. But lead does not corrode or break down very quickly or easily, so it remains in the environment. And loons don't have teeth, swallow those fish whole, and it goes into their first part of digestion for them is a gizzard. So they naturally need to pick up rocks to grind up the fish that they swallow. But if they accidentally pick up our lost lead fishing tackle, which lead is a very soft metal, it breaks down really, really quickly and enters their bloodstream and makes them very, very ill. So this is a loon that died from lead poisoning, a radiograph of it. In this circle here is all the fishing tackle that's over in the blue. And you might be able to see some of these gray specks. Those are also the rocks that they naturally swallowed. And it's just one little tiny piece of lead split shot will make a loon sick. Other species are incredibly affected by lead, but lead for a loon is a death sentence. I have, just in my short time working on this, I've read lots of papers. There are people who have been working on this for decades in different parts of the country. I haven't seen any reports of recovery and rehabilitation of a common loon from lead poisoning. So for a loon, it's about 2 or 3 weeks after ingestion to death. And it's a really slow process, but also quick. They can't fly, they can't swim, dive, catch food, take care of their young, and they can't retreat to land. Sick loons are seldom found. If they are found, I've seen rehabilitators take in sick loons, and there's really nothing they can do for that bird. They pretty much euthanize it almost immediately if they know it has lead poisoning. And right now, our current national estimate is that about 25% of adult loon deaths is from lead poisoning. So a number that we can work on in all the states that loons make their home in. As I said, there are other species that are affected by lead. Bald eagles mostly ingest lead through gut piles of deer. So usually in the fall. The Raptor Center in St. Paul brings in an amazing number of eagles, every year. So, and about 80% of the eagles that are brought into the clinic have some measurable amount of lead in their system. Eagles, though, if they're found in time, have a better shot at being rehabilitated and being released. But still, a lot of eagles die from lead poisoning too. Another one too are trumpeter swans. So the photo on the right, this is Sucker Channel in Vadnais Heights, just south of North Oaks and Highway 96. So this stays open year-round, that channel. So trumpeter swans gather there. It's also a very heavily fished spot. And so trumpeter swans are found there and sick with lead poisoning every year. Just a few weeks ago, I got an email from one of our colleagues at the Vadnais Lakes Area Water Management Organization that another swan had been found. And the DNR knows that this is an issue in this spot. Ramsey County knows it's an issue, and so they actually don't even test the dead swans anymore. So they've found 27 swans in this one spot since 2018. And last fall, Ramsey County actually dredged this spot. They collected about 15 pounds of lead, which is a lot, but also there's still a lot there. And trumpeter swans are herbivores, so they're just picking up lost fishing tackle as they're eating plants. Perhaps you were wondering if you have tackle that is lead, if you don't already know. So just a quick couple of slides here. If it's a dull gray color, especially split shot, especially in like a pie-shaped container, I can tell you it's likely lead. Dull gray color is a big signal. If you have split shot that's nice and shiny, that's tin, and so that is not lead, not toxic. If you have jigs in your tackle box and it's painted, you can't tell. Lead is soft. You could take a pliers to a jig head, maybe one you don't like very much, maybe not your favorite color. And if it makes an indentation, that's a good sign that it's lead. And then if it's not painted, I always tell people, go outside if you want to do this test. You can scratch it on a white sheet of paper. And if it leaves a mark, if a little paint is chipped off and you just can't tell, and then it leaves a mark, then you know it's lead too. So our program we love fishing. My colleague is a big angler. I don't fish nearly as much as he does, but we really just want to keep promoting people to keep fishing, but also know all of these other alternatives that are safer for you. There's no safe level of lead for human health, and safer for wildlife as well. So especially tungsten, bismuth, steel, tin are big ones to look for, especially a lot of the open water manufacturers are coming out with more tungsten options. So last few action points. If you're getting ready for opener, you're gonna buy some more tackle. See if you can find some lead-free this spring. If you are also in the mindset of spring cleaning your tackle box, and you have some stuff you just know you won't use, and you wanna recycle it, it can't go in your garbage, can't go in your household recycling. Has to go now conveniently down the road to the Forest Lake Environmental Center. So I'm so glad they made another site for Washington County. So you can bring it there and they will recycle it for you. Biggest thing is to share about this with others. So maybe if you're on the boat this summer, someone's fishing, you see a loon, I hope you remember maybe one of my loon fun facts to share. And then all of you are doing a great job and we continue to work to keep our lakes, rivers, and streams clean. So I'll put my contact info here. I put some of our fact sheets in the back too, but I'll be up here for questions at the end as well.
Thank you, Kelly. Great job. That was excellent. Thank you. If anybody still has a ticket and you want to be part of the drawing, we're going to draw right after our next speaker, so you come and see me and put it in the box. Our next speaker is Steve McComas with Blue Water Science.
Hey, thanks a lot, Ken. So, are we going with the clicker these days? Okay, no problem. Hey, good afternoon, everybody, or good evening. Pleasure to be here again. I was going to talk about some of the non-native species in Forest Lake. We have a lot of native species. We have a few non-native species as well. Here is kind of our list of invasive species, aquatic invasive species in Forest Lake. I think this still works. Maybe it doesn't. Okay. At any rate, here are some of the plants: curlyleaf pondweed, Eurasian milfoil, flowering rush. Zebra mussels are also present. They're macroinvertebrate. Native plants. Our native plants are always in a constant battle with the aquatic non-native species, and a lot of times don't underestimate these native plants. They're pretty good at maintaining their own kingdom as well. What we've done over the years, we've been kind of keeping track since 2009 anyway. You can kind of see our list of CLP as curlyleaf pondweed and what we've treated over the years. We had a high point here in 2017, big curlyleaf year, but since then we've had ups and downs, and that's pretty cyclical, and that's pretty common for curlyleaf pondweed as well. In 2024, we were down to 16 acres that we treated. Be nice to know, or be nice to see if that was an ongoing trend, but that's what we check every year, because curlyleaf does have this aspect of being pretty unpredictable as well. Oh, also in the next column over here, we'll talk about milfoil a little bit later, but we first found it in 2015, and since then it's been up and down. We were going on a downward trend, and then last year we had a little surprise in Second Lake with some milfoil. Anyway, here is what we have treated for curlyleaf over about the last 10 years or so, 10 or 12 years. All these squares are the areas that we have treated at one time or another in the last, about the last 11 or 12 years. And you can see right now it's pretty well distributed around the lake. So conditions are pretty conducive for curlyleaf pondweed. The only thing is it doesn't grow in every place every year. And so it has, the conditions in Forest Lake are good for curlyleaf growth, but they're not optimal. Otherwise, we would have curlyleaf around the lake every year. So some years, it'll pop up, we treat it, it's down for a year or two, and then it comes back up someplace else, and then it also can return to that same place. So that's what we call our hotspot map. And that's kind of a summary of some of our curly leaf treatments over the past few years. Well, as we were doing our curly leaf evaluation too, we found a plant in Second Lake. Kind of a surprise to us. It actually was hitting the surface in June. We kind of said, boy, it wasn't there in May, it wasn't there in April. What happened? All of a sudden, we had kind of this explosion of, in this case, this was the hybrid Eurasian milfoil, or hybrid milfoil. In 2024, we had a little bit of Eurasian milfoil, light to moderate growth in First Lake. That's really where it first showed up in 2015. We hadn't had much milfoil growth in Second Lake until 2024. And what happened is that we had a hybrid milfoil in Second Lake, whereas in First Lake, where we've had better control over the years, that seems to be more of a pure Eurasian strain. What happens is that Eurasian milfoil can cross with northern milfoil, and that's why we call it a hybrid. So a hybrid is a cross between northern and Eurasian. Thing is that it's still fertile, and so with these hybrids, you can back cross those things as well. And so, well, right now, they actually had genetics done on this plant, and sure enough, it was a certified hybrid. One positive note is that we don't have hardly any milfoil in Third Lake. So that was a little bit of a surprise in Second Lake, and that's where we're talking about how everybody came together. It was treated, knocked down. We did not find any milfoil at the end of the growing season last year. However, so the herbicides are very effective. But those roots, unless you are able to kill all the roots, the milfoil will come back. So we'll see. It's we're finding some milfoil in some lakes, but really we'll know in May and June what the status is of not only the pure Eurasian in First Lake, but also the hybrid in Second Lake. Here was our treatment area in Second Lake, and we treated like 47 acres. In fact, all the treatment last year was in Second Lake. First Lake, where we started out with 20 or 30 acres, one year we had 40 acres, we have really knocked the heck out of it in First Lake, which is good news. But that hybrid, we'll see how tenacious that might be, and see if we can knock that back to get in line with what we have in First Lake. So here are the treatment areas over the years. In 2015 to 2023 was mostly in First Lake. And we had one year where we first saw it, we hit it with 47 acres of herbicide. Since then, we haven't treated nearly as much. And in 2024, almost all the treatment was right there in Second Lake. So every year, like curly leaf, every year is a little bit different with milfoil. And so that's what we're on that case. We'll be inspecting. Well, the other aquatic plant invasive species in Forest Lake is flowering rush. In 2024, we are treating these dots here. Now, these dots are not to scale, and these dots represent a light, moderate, or heavy growth, the green, the yellow, and the reds, based on kind of the size of the patch. You can see there's not much in First Lake with this flowering rush. There's quite a bit, though, in Second and Third Lake. We have about 400 sites that we have kind of authenticated or that we have found over the last few years, but flowering rush doesn't sprout every site every year. So we keep trying to knock it back and also keep it from spreading. This is one of the few flowering rush populations in the state that has fertile seeds. And so it can spread by root fragment flowers. So by maintaining control of heads and also knocking down the vegetative material, we've been keeping it pretty much restricted to Second and Third Lake. When we talk about patches, sometimes, I mean, that'll be a green spot on our map. you know, a few stems that are emerging through the water column. This would be closer, this would be more like a red spot here, probably 300 or 400 square feet. The good news is that in lakes where curly or flowering rush has not been evaluated or managed, it can turn into be hundreds of acres and cause a problem. Detroit Lakes had a pretty expensive program to try to bring their flowering rush under control. It's been successful, but also at quite a cost. Light growth, heavy growth. So, after our final treatment last year, when we went out and evaluated, we had almost the green dots and the yellow dots. We're talking some of those green dots are 10 square feet, but they still count as a dot, not to scale, but we are on the right track for keeping it under control and keeping it from spreading throughout the lake. And I'm not sure, but did I get oh yeah, the acreage. So we first started at 7 or 8 acres, and as we have been pretty aggressive with treating down through the years, we had a little flare up here in our first delineation, about 1.2 acres, and that's total. I mean, that's probably 100 sites with maybe 20 to 50 square feet. And we're a little bit nervous, but by the end of the season, we're down to less than a half acre, and that is actually in line with the previous years. So it's not eliminated from the lake, which is a long-term goal, but at the same time, we're keeping it under control to a large degree. Well, there's another invasive species out there, not an aquatic plant, but the zebra mussels. Zebra mussels, first observations were in 2015, and we found that they were in a number of sites, a number of areas, so an eradication attempt was really not a viable option. So then we knew we were kind of into a long-term management and kind of an inspection program. So that was 2015. Now, as we've been going, the characteristics for zebra mussel growth in Forest Lake are good, not necessarily optimal. However, they will attach to aquatic plants. They would prefer rock, debris and things, but if they don't have enough rocks, because they need to attach to aquatic plants. So what we've done, and we've done some comprehensive mussels on those aquatic plants. So based on that, when we mark where they've been found, we can see that the distribution is pretty good through all 3 lakes. And zebra mussels have probably already peaked in Forest Lake in terms of what the highest density they're going to be. And then they'll start now kind of dying back because they've eaten all the good algae. They are such good filterers. They will eat algae, proliferate, but then at the same time as the algae goes down, they kind of starve themselves. So their numbers will go down. So we'll see how the zebra mussel density and distribution does go over the years. That was 2023. I wouldn't expect it to go much, you know, in terms of abundance. It can't get much more abundant, but the densities will be a factor, and we'll see how that works. And just a little side note, here's kind of what we're talking about zebra mussels on aquatic plants. They're not very big. They're probably less than a ½ inch often, and those are probably 1 year old. Those are from that growing season. So they keep multiplying till they run out of food. If condition when they really knock the algae down, they start declining in 3 to 5 years. When conditions in the algae are not quite as edible as they are in some systems, it takes them a little bit longer. But then they'll start dying back 5 to 10 years. And right now in Forest Lake, yeah, they're going to be on our docks. They'll be on lifts. We might drag some into irrigation pumps. but most of the biomass of zebra mussels are on aquatic plants in Forest Lake. Well, how are the plants doing? They are doing pretty well. In terms of native plants, the zebra mussels have had some clearing, they've cleared up the water a little bit, but at the same time, we've had some lower lake levels. And so that was a 1-2 punch that really has kind of accelerated some native plant growth. So our abundance of native plants has increased in a couple of years. Last year with higher lake levels in 2024, it put a little bit of a damper on them. They're still abundant, but the lake levels make a big difference because it's affecting the light penetration to the bottom, and that's really what the plants need to really become super abundant. So that was June 2024, and it went from there. But as the summer went on, yeah, we still have a lot of native aquatic plants. Those are excellent for fish and fish habitat, as well as they have some ability to help keep the water clear. Like Mike Kenny was talking about, we have pretty good water quality in Forest Lake. Among all the other things that have been going on with the watershed projects and in-lake projects, have actually contributed somewhat to a native plant growth. Native plants can help keep the water clear as well. So they are very important from that aspect. Well, there's what happens when clarity changes with a combination of zebra mussels and also the projects. Algae, the open water algae is reduced. Because of now better sunlight penetration, we get more aquatic plants. Aquatic plants with improved clarity can grow maybe a little bit deeper, but and we saw that in 2022 and 2023, lower lake levels. They had even better lake penetration. But the good news is that even though we have pretty abundant native plants, fish are doing just fine. They're using those plants as habitat. The good news is with native plants, the stem densities are not too high or so high that it affects fish habitat. In fact, it enhances fish habitat, whereas some of our non-native species, not necessarily enhancing fish habitat conditions. And then just in conclusion, well, Forest Lake, with the 3 basins and coves and sandbars and rushes and everything else, it has a plethora of natural features. And yes, we have some aquatic invasive species in the lake, but it's still a healthy lake. And it's kind of, our projects show that, yeah, invasive species and a healthy lake and recreational opportunities, we can all kind of coexist and figure it out. The ongoing challenge still remains, though. We have ultimate goal maybe of eliminating some of these species, invasive species, but in the meantime, make sure that we are managing them as best we can in a cost-effective manner, as well as an ecological manner as well. So with that, I'm going to call it.
Great, thank you, Steve. Okay, it's time for the drawing, and then we're going to have the question and answer session. I'm looking for a volunteer to come up and draw the drawing. Marty, would you like to come up? All right. Okay, there's the ticket. All right, the ticket number is 8945959. 8945959. So has anybody got that one? Okay, great. All right, we have a winner. We have a winner. So go head back to the back corner table and collect your prize. Okay. Can I ask the speakers to come back up? So Mike, Aiden, Steve, Kelly, come on back up. I'd like you to sit up there. I'd like you to sit up there. Is that okay? Okay. Yeah. Yeah. That would be fantastic. That'd be great. I'm gonna get one more chair. Hang in there, Mike. Oh, let's slide, everybody slide over one spot. Here we go. Okay. Do you want to? Oh, great idea. Yeah, great. Okay. So we're going to start the question and answer, but before that, there is still a lot of food over there. If anybody's just starving, oh my gosh, that you can't go without food. Please help yourself. Okay, let's see. Start off. Any questions out there? And I'm gonna hand the mic to you guys. Great, Ed, you got a question?
Hello. I have two questions. So I joined the Lake Association in 2015, and I attended the first presentation back 10 years ago. And I was aware there was 3 access to the lake, or 3 established access where we monitor every summer, but there were other access to the lake that nobody monitors, but everybody knows about it. So this year I've been actually biking around the lake, and I can see there's like at least 3 or 4 lake access. And when I'm kayaking, I see people bringing boats in and out of some of those access. So, and we talked 10 years ago about controlling some of those access, because then we get the invasive species. So my question for the Lake Association is, 10 years later, which plans we have to really hopefully have the 3 control access, so people have the inspectors, can check the boats. So that's my first question. My second is for the city. So the Lake Association or the watershed is asking us to protect the shore with native plants and avoid runoff and so forth. So the city have city parks, and I talked to a city official, watershed people, a couple years ago, but it's hard to see any progress. That some of the parks have grass like right into shore with none of the recommendation that we get every year. And recently we got the instruction from the lakeshore, and there's supposed to be a big improvement with native plants and protecting for it. But the city went with a quick fix for this year, just moving the rocks, putting the dirt, and putting the riprap back in there. So I see that like a double standard. They're asking us to protect the shore, but then the city is not doing their part, I think. Those are my 2 questions.
Thank you for the question. I'll let you guys decide who wants to answer on
I'll
that, where
just
you want to
take
start.
part of it. I don't have a whole lot of knowledge on that. There's 3 public accesses on the lake that are allowable for boat accesses. The other, I'd say city-owned property that's on the lake are easement properties, and those are not to be used for a public access. So if you see somebody putting in a boat, a canoe or a kayak is one thing, but to be putting a boat in there, I'd be surprised to have heard that someone's putting a boat in there. And if so, where? Are you seeing people put a boat in that's not an access?
Yes, so it is a touchy subject. Clearly, to have that controlled access is ideal, but these are long-time access points that people who don't live on the lake, it gives them accessibility to the lake, whether it's the winter or summer. We do not, the city would rather not have those, but those are just granted from years on to years, and so we are more than willing to work with the Lake Association, whatever, to have more controlled access there, but they are points that it's public, it's city-owned land, but it's the idea back in the day when they did all this was to allow more access to the lake. It's everyone's lake, and not just the individuals that live on the lake. And so, yeah. So there's an example down on Beach Drive. We put a conveyor belt there for the harvester. A lot of the neighbors in that area were upset about that because it did limit their access. So it's that fine line, and we're more than willing to address that. As far as the fix downtown at the Lakeside Park, we have a long-term shoreline plan there that's quite substantial, expensive. We just wanted to get it back to where it was so that it can be used by everyone. Long-term, we will have a change there where there's more access points, native vegetation, exactly what the Lake Association and Watershed are suggesting that everyone should do.
Great, thank you. Any more questions?
I'm just gonna add a little bit more to that.
Sure.
As was mentioned, the city's been a great partner. We've been engaged with them on Lakeside Park. And so there's certainly a plan in place. I had a question earlier that was mentioned about North Shore Circle Park, which is another small property. And we are working with the city of Forest Lake to do a shoreline restoration that should hopefully be commencing in May. We'll be having a neighborhood meeting. We'll put out some flyers and postcards to the immediate adjacent neighbors there. We are just finalizing selecting a contractor this week. So it's a relationship we're developing, and the city and the staff there have been great. And so we hope to have some good example projects in the next within the next year. Just not Lakeside Park. That's a longer developing plan.
There was a question, I think, over here.
Is the dam that they're up or something, because the lake is really high, and it's super hardly any snow.
All right, well, thank you, everybody. So the district does own the property and the structure. So when we do maintain regular visibility on that, there is, if you looked at it, this is like it's intended to be a fish barrier, but under the conditions last year where the water on the Sunrise River was so high, the carp were able to make it up onto the fish barrier and then enter. So obviously not sufficient. So I'm actually working with Professor Peter Sorensen from the University of Minnesota to look to modify that. However, the challenge always is to make sure that it's such that it's not going to capture a lot of debris and provide any obstruction. So right now what you're seeing there, I mean, there is some organic material just that's there, but it's not sufficient to obstruct the water. We've had a lot of precipitation still coming out of, last year we had this above average rainfall, significant, and so a lot of the wetland complexes, and then the third basin in particular, receives a lot of groundwater. So when the other, like Keewatin, sits at a higher elevation, all those areas over there, then more water just because of the head pressure from one elevation to the other pushes water into Forest Lake that way as well. So there's a combination of just the carryover from last year and then the what we've seen this year already in precipitation.
Great, thank you. Any more questions?
I have a question pertaining to the Beach Drive access. Last year it was blocked and it caused a lot of problems for the people that have used it for years that live in the neighborhood. Is that going to be accessible by this year?
So the history on that, we were fortunate for a number of years to have a property owner that was willing to store the harvester and a conveyor on his private property. That property changed hands. The new owners understandably weren't willing to host the harvester there. So that's why last year we did have to move it. If you've seen that machine, it is very slow moving. So we try to strategically have conveyors at different parts of the lake so that you're not spending all that time of travel. I think ideally for this year, if we can limit that time that it's there and not there all year, that would be maybe a happy medium, because I understand that the neighborhood does use that. So that's really what we're going to try to do is I can't say that it's not going to be there at all this summer. It likely will, but hopefully for not as long.
Next question.
This is either to Mike or Adrian, but you've mentioned about deterioration of leaves and grass clippings for phosphorus in the lake. The biggest contributor, weeds. I rake up wheelbarrows, and many people in this room are very diligent cleaning the weeds up. I got yelled at by my neighbor for raking up the leaves and was told to let the lake. The massive amount of weeds that were up on the shoreline should be removed from the lake. Is that correct? I mean, you shouldn't literally, I will have 1.5 feet deep of weeds rotting, not on my property, but rotting in the lake. And by August, it smells like an outhouse, methane gas. Is that good for the lake or bad for the lake?
That's a
We're
great
supposed to
question.
rake up the leaves and the weeds and get them out of the lake, aren't we?
Here's a couple of things, a couple of little tidbits, some background information. Yes, aquatic plants also have phosphorus in them, but aquatic plants are also 95% water. So when they decompose, we only have 5% of a wet weight of a plant being actual organic matter, and then within that, there's some phosphorus, and then within that, because of the organic matter, a lot of that phosphorus goes into microbial growth. The bacteria are using the phosphorus, not necessarily the algae. That's why lakes in this region for thousands of years have been able to stay clear under natural conditions, even when aquatic plants die back, because it can be assimilated with the other biota in the lake, not necessarily just the algae. Now, a good point is with leaves too. Yeah, leaves, you can rake them out because, even though leaves are mostly decomposed, there's about 1% of the leaf matter that's refractory. That means it doesn't decompose. That's going to add to some muck. So over the years, you can get some muck accumulation. But also at the same time, we are in the hardwood forest ecoregion. So for thousands of years too, we've had maple leaves, oak leaves, everything falling into the lakes. Now, one little thing about leaves is that they're low in phosphorus, high in organic matter. That's the perfect food for the microbial community and not necessarily for the algae. However, grass clippings are very high in phosphorus and high in organic matter. Grass clippings are a lot worse for the ecology of a lake than leaves are, for example. So, yes, take the leaves and the aquatic plants out if you want. They can contribute to a small degree to some organic matter and muck accumulation, but at the same time, don't forget too that these lakes have been able to assimilate that over the last couple thousand. I mean, the glaciers came in these lakes are 9,000 years old, so they've been able to work with that, so to speak.
Thanks, Steve. Maybe a little bit more on that. So we did work with the St. Croix Watershed Research Station and the University of Minnesota a few years ago. We took core samples of all 3 basins to see what the historical, they could do a reconstruction based on through diatoms and other many different components of the sediment to evaluate its age, the sedimentation rate, et cetera. So what we've clearly seen through European settlement timeframe, Forest Lake was called Forest Lake for a reason. So, if you look at some of the historical stuff, there's a sawmill on the corner of 61 and 97 at some point, and so all that, a lot of transition has occurred around the lake, and we can see it in the sediment profile of the lake over time. So that's the one thing, a lot of artificial conveyances to the lake. So whatever you can do, whether it's removal and, it may seem like a small amount, or, I've been trying to encourage more mulching decks on mowers rather than blowing it or capturing it, so then you're just bringing the organic material back into your own lawn. That's a very good practice as well. And then also try to avoid, I know it's I've seen the commercials on them. I don't know if anybody's actually using them, but the alum treatment, once enough sediment gets on top of it, that'll no longer be available then to hold the phosphorus. So, so if you're trying to avoid a lot of power, or such that you're creating a lot of sediment, or if you're using one of those machines that blows the sediment away from your dock area and it goes out into the deeper water, then it will cover that alum treatment, and then that internal load will return to the middle basin of Forest Lake. So a lot of complex things. If you have any more questions on any of that, you're happy to give us a call or stop in.
Great question. There's one over here.
A question about loons. I'm wondering if we have, or if you have any efforts at tracking nesting success on Forest Lake, and if so, can you report as to how many successful chicks have been raised?
I might have to put that in the hands of all of you as resident scientists, because I don't know. In the state of Minnesota right now, there's not a lot. There is some work being done by Dr. Walter Piper in the Brainerd Lakes area, I think on the Gull Lake chain, looking at nesting and productivity there. But I don't know of anything that's happening here in Forest Lake. So the DNR does have a loon watcher program that you can sign up for, that you can report your loons, and that would be a great thing for you to look into, because we need more data about loons. We need more data about loon populations, in my opinion. And I would love to know the results if any of you keep an eye on your loon nests this summer.
Another question.
Yeah, Ken, I'm kind of wondering how many loon nests are actually observed currently on Forest Lake?
Another question? I've also got another pitch for food. As you know, when we're all leaving this evening, there's extra food. Grab some on the way out. Another question. Over here? Going once? Oh.
I think I was one of the first person on Forest Lake to find zebra mussels, and I brought it into Steve Stegner, and he said, yep, that's it. But I noticed the following year, there was quite a lot of zebra mussels. And it kind of rose. I think last year, I looking at the number of zebra mussels on my dock pole, last year was a lot less. So it appears it's maybe a word cycle, but that's what I've noticed anyway. Second comment I have is the horrendous ices we've had, because so water won't run into the lake. And in my property, I've got a little bit of it, and then I have two bedded in. And so that's what I do. But with the amount of ices we've got, that should help, unless people get them fixed. Comment.
Another question. Okay, 1, 2, 3, that's a wrap. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for coming. Safe drive home.